felt a messianic zeal that what we have found in our Guru, what we are doing, offers an example to the world, that it would be a jewel that people could see shining from thousands of miles away. I have to transform and go back to those days. I was young, I was in one way lost and looking for myself. One question we always ask, those of us who were with him, is when did it begin to go wrong?
That was sweet. He was so proud that we had all this done. You know, unless you see it, you don't get it.
My role was, I loved him, and that one must be clear about it. Anything more didn't matter to me. And it was for me so beautiful when he would say, Sheela, come. That Sheela, I would die to hear again.
It is not an economic movement. It is a religious movement. So I don't say that it can help in any way to make a poor country rich. It cannot. But it can help a poor man to be rich in a very non-economic sense. If riches only mean outward things, that it is absolutely irrelevant. But if you think that inner consciousness, peace, a blissful attitude, a life lived as an inner celebration, then it can help.
I opened the door and nobody was there. And I had a moment of confusion, and then I could see he was sitting in his chair, and he invited me to go over and sit with him. And he said, come closer, till I was touching his chair. And I remember at one point he touched quite gently my chakras for a few moments and paused with whatever he was feeling. And I had the distinct impression, like little aeroplanes flying above my head, like he was going to different spaces of consciousness as he talked to me. I'd never experienced anything like that.
I did not go to a guru. I just went with my father to meet this wise man, and I fell in love. And I felt like if life ends now, I have nothing to lose. To have that No other desire, no other expectation, no other wishes. For a young girl, that was already something. When I had that feeling, I was only 21.
It was a very powerful sense of thankfulness that I finally met a father who could teach me what I needed to learn, what I so wanted to understand.
Right departure.
My father was a bomber pilot flying over Germany when the war broke out. He became the senior bomber crew in his squadron of 16 bombers. The other 15, they were all shot down. I was fascinated as a child with aircraft. My mother, father, 2 uncles, and grandfather were all in the osteopathic or naturopathic profession in Scotland. My brothers were identical twins, were born 18 months after me, and I felt left out, and very quickly I did my best to kill them. And because there were 2 of them, they could combine and oppose me in a very effective way. Often the fighting between my brothers and I was so intense that I would even eat outside on the dustbins.
We are 6 brothers, sisters, and I was the youngest. All of my brothers, sisters love me. My father was a follower of Gandhi. He played a big role in independence movement. My mother, a pool of love, who just supported the men she loved. He had surrounded himself with people where he himself can learn, and through that, he can influence his children. He wanted that we children learn as much as we can. That was the reason why he himself put me in contact with Bhagwan. When my father first brought me to listen to him, he was known as Acharya Rajneesh. Acharya is someone who understands life, someone who has a vision. My father used to say he had Saraswati on his tongue. Saraswati is a goddess of knowledge.
My mother taught me Swedish massage at the family osteopathic clinic. It was 16 massages every day, and the final patient came in and I was exhausted. And I said to myself, I can't do this. And the first time that I remember, I heard words in my inner ear saying, hold his feet. And after some minutes of simply holding his feet, I heard hold his sacrum, so I went to hold his sacrum. And so the session went for 25 minutes, and the man got up and said, what was that? That was the best session I've ever had. And I didn't know what it was. But it started an inquiry in me that kept me looking for someone who would know. And when I first heard Rajneesh talking on an audio cassette in London, one of my first thoughts in that first hour of listening to him was, this guy knows.
With one book, he got complete attention of 600 million people. With one simple, small booklet, From Sex to Superconsciousness. To talk of sex in terms of religion, in terms of spirituality, was a scandal. On one side, he had to stop public discourses, but on the other side, it brought the world to his feet.
Did Lakshmi make him the guru, or did he make himself the guru? I don't know. I don't know Rajneesh's version of the story. I know Lakshmi's version. She was his supporter and his personal secretary, and she arranged it.
And some of his lovers then in Bombay decided to call him Bhagwan. Bhagwan accepted that title, and he was known to Bhagwan Rajneesh. Bhagwan is divine. After I went to US, my father kept sending us books of Bhagwan. And somehow, every time I look at Bhagwan, something would happen. Love is a phenomenon no one can explain. His name was Mark Silverman. He was a very beautiful man, sensitive, intelligent, funny. And he had a cancer of lymphatic system. He was given only a year and a half to live, but we lived together 13 years. I brought him to India, and he was a bit skeptical. But then he visited with me Bhagwan, and he said to me, what he says makes all sense. It is all logical. And Bhagwan ended his name from Mark Silverman to Swami Prem Chinmaya. And my name from Sheela Silverman to Ma Anand Sheela. In memory that we have lost our old and we are in the new journey, he gives us this new name, new clothing, new image, which we do it every day in marketing.
And behind him a big blue and gold banner saying, surrender to me and I will transform you. That is my promise. Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh. time, what were my feelings? An ecstatic sense of coming home. It came together with the doubts of, well, could I really allow someone else to tell me what to do? And he started by asking me, do you have a love life? How is your sexual life? I was very shocked by what an intimate, personal question this was. I was reminded of what we say in the UK, that we are British and we don't talk about our sexuality to other people. But he was now my teacher. I mumbled something about that I was alone, and he said, have a sexual relationship with someone here. When I couldn't sleep at night, reflecting on, well, what am I doing here? Then I had a lot of doubt. And saying to myself, well, all right, there's difficulties, but there were difficulties in London too. So tough it out. Go through this difficult time.
People were coming from all over the world. I am sure other residents were not happy about all these hippies coming there. There was a pressure on him to go out of there. Bhagwan was a man with aim, and that was creating a commune, creating his utopia.
And tremendous excitement with people arriving almost every day.
Searching for their identity in the middle of enormous social change, a sexual revolution, a student revolution, the Vietnam War.
Was certainly a tremendous excitement. Some of them bringing money or skills or resources, some of them just bringing themselves. The secret of success is to have three things: to be in the right place, at the right time, with the right people.
Come to the basic question, the most fundamental question, that who am I? Who? Let your consciousness help you to remain with the question. I'm not going to give you any answers. You already have too many.
When Rajneesh started to call himself Bhagwan and declare that he was enlightened, that was something I needed to understand what that meant. And my understanding at that time was it meant that you were without an ego. So the promise of the egoless state was that you would be contented, if not more clear, and all pain, all suffering disappears. and we accepted totally that he was enlightened because of the things he did. My interpretation today is a lot of those things were psychic or intuitive, different than enlightened. And it was Rajneesh's understanding that, particularly for Western people, sitting silently, doing nothing, only allowed monkey mind to run riot. You needed to exorcise or harness all this energy, and then you could sit silently. It was like bioenergetic therapy, where you take your body to a physical limit and use your breath and harness a connection to very raw emotions. So then the inner feeling changes.
People come to me and they say, everything has become beautifully silent. The meditation is growing. The anger has disappeared. But they become suspicious. Am I dreaming all this? With doubt, the dream continues. With trust, suddenly you are awake. It is their experience that they have become silent, that the anger has disappeared, that the sex has become less and less a boss, more and more a servant.
In my childhood in Scotland, we never had much money, and I could buy a bar of chocolate when I was lucky twice a week. And going to Poona was like you could eat the whole chocolate store. You could have all the chocolate, meaning women for me.
This whole existence is a dance of life. I teach love for life. To me, all is sacred, from the lowest rung of the ladder to the highest rung. It is the same ladder, from the body to the soul, from the physical to the spiritual, from sex to samadhi.
And imagine the women who had sexual contact with Bhagwan. Around Bhagwan, everyone's one common desire, how can I come close to Bhagwan? How can I come close to Bhagwan? And if somebody had few moments to be together in that passion, it can transform that person's entire life. I had never desired that I would want physical contact with him. For me, just his look at me was enough for everything. It was a very, very beautiful time together for me, Bhagwan, and Chinmaya.
He gave me very focused and specific meditations. Meditate, work, make love, but don't talk. And it was the most extraordinary, powerful time in my life as an opening to my own gifts.
To be there, it did become a paradise. And if you wanted to stay in paradise, if you want to stay with Bhagwan, you have to work. So we had our own version of propaganda. And the propaganda was that you can be enlightened any day.
Sehr viele Sannyasin sind Akademiker. Aber die machen hier also Postdienst, sie sind Guards und sorgen für einen reibungslosen Ablauf des Poona-Alltags. Oder sie bewässern den Garten. Hauptsächlich leisten sie hier Arbeiten, die für viele im Westen eigentlich unvorstellbar gewesen wären.
All of us in the beginning were unhappy about the structure because we thought this is a journey into freedom. Everybody can be wild and free. Structure was organized through his secretary. Everybody blamed Lakshmi for everything. But my thoughts were very quickly cleared up by Bhagwan. And once Bhagwan said to me, Sheela, what do you think Lakshmi does? What I tell her. I started supporting her where she needed my help. I became the trusted of Lakshmi, Lakshmi's private and personal secretary.
In 1975, Lakshmi was attacked by a young Indian man whom Lakshmi had not allowed to have a darshan. And in response to this attack, Rajneesh said to Lakshmi, now you must have a bodyguard. Shiva will be your bodyguard. And Lakshmi said, no, I don't need a bodyguard. You need a bodyguard. So I got to be with the Guru 4 hours a day. That was a paradise for me, to sit right next to him and watch his mastery. And in those 7 years of sitting there, he didn't miss many people. Rajneesh had an astonishing psychic gift to hear, see, feel people without words, before words.
In a darshan one day, when I arrived in a darshan, he was sitting next to Bhagwan.
And so Sheela and I became lovers.
For a few days. I got a lot of beating for it too, from Bhagwan.
One evening, Sheela is there at darshan. I am there as the bodyguard to Rajneesh's right side. And Rajneesh says, Sheela, I've received a letter from Chinmaya, her husband. And he is uncomfortable with this, your affair. So you do one thing with this affair, because Chinmaya is not very well. You drop it out.
In your body, it's not finished, but you finish the contact. This whole idea of therapy began when the first therapist came. And from there he saw that the Europeans were very ready to experiment.
He saw that the mixture of psychotherapy and meditation was very powerful. Carl Gustav Jung said, "You think you're the master of your own house. You're not. There's a second person living in your house." In Jung's terminology, the shadow.
It was also good income. Ashram became suddenly self-sufficient. People paid for Bhagwan's books, tapes, and then the therapies. I never went through single therapy group. Every time when everybody's doing, I would go and ask Bhagwan, can I not do some groups? He said, you don't need it, it's not for you.
I don't think I did a single therapy group. I'd already done 2 years of workshops in London. The whole dance of this exposure, sexuality, for me, jealousy, well, it was difficult for me to be in love with Isabel and hear through the grapevine how Isabel had been asked by a man in the Tantra group to take off all her clothes so he could look at her naked, and then he wanted to make love to her. And when I had a difficult time, that was my problem. That was the zeitgeist of the ashram. You have to work through your sexual jealousy to become enlightened. Then I took the message that, yes, something's wrong with me. Why am I jealous? I should work on this. Let me find my jealousy. Let me try to breathe out my jealousy and accept this. And I was sleeping with several different women a week. There's very little chance of jealousy because you know you will only sleep together once. And you stay away from the other man who lives in your house. You stay away from your shadow. In my case, at a certain point, he said, okay, enough of the candy store. You've done that. Now find one woman and settle with one woman. And so began my relationship with Gayan. I was in a complete love with Gayan and wanted to just totally be with her.
Chinmaya edited Bhagwan's books. His body was very weak. He had a herpes zoster and the Hodgkin's had spread in his lung wall. He was tried to be operated, but they could not operate him. I felt his death coming before he felt it. I said, I think Chinmay is dying. Then Bhagwan called me right away in his room, and he said to me, Sheela, you love him deeply, and he loves you deeply. He should not see a sorrow in your eyes or on your face. Bhagwan said to Chinmaya, you are a lucky man, that you know you are going to die. And this certainty most people don't want to accept.
Having been 2 years with Gayan, I found that I was bored. I was bored with sex with her. I was bored with the relationship. And one attractive Italian woman came up to me and said she would like to sleep with me. And I said, no, I'm married. But it started an energy where I wanted to sleep with her. And I was angry with Gayan because of Gayan. I couldn't sleep with this attractive Italian woman. And he just said, just be natural. Never feel guilty about anything. I thought, well, then I'll be natural. I'll sleep with the Italian woman and all the other women I would like to sleep with. And years later, I thought, no, I didn't interpret it the right way. Just be natural for my essence, for my soul meant stay with the woman you love. That's the natural thing. To go and fuck around with all the available single women is, in a way, sexually natural, perhaps, but not natural for my heart.
One evening, Bhagwan calls me and declares me his secretary. I look at him, I say, Bhagwan, I'm not capable of it. His answer was, if I say you're my secretary, then you have the potential and you do as I tell you. Somehow there was this confidence. If he sees that I can do it, then I must have the ability to do it.
Now stop. Stop. Und jetzt fangen wir tanzen.
Whenever I come in a moment of crisis here, I say, hey Sheela, live life, laugh life, dance life. This is his teachings.
We celebrate everything. We love the body. We love the soul. We are materialist spiritualists. Nothing like this has ever happened in the world. This is a new experiment, a new beginning. And it has great future for it.
That was me in 1980. believing I would be there the rest of my life. And I would write 1 or 2 letters a year to my father. I lost contact with all other friends. Slowly, as the years went by, I thought, well, this is my life. This is my journey. This is my family.
The East has remained lopsided because of the so-called spirituality. It has remained poor, unscientific, without any technology, and the West has chosen materialism. But man is very empty and meaningless. Without spirituality, there will be no center. Man is falling apart. The Western man is half, the Eastern man is half. My effort here is to create the whole man.
When he said those kinds of things, I was somewhere between, this is just PR, he's just getting publicity, and the world does need a new man. And boy, this is amazing what we've achieved. Look at what we've done. In 1981, there were about 5,000 people living around or in the ashram.
And there were another 15,000 people spread through the world, earning money to come, earning money and sending it to Poona.
And then this tremendous group field when there was 5,000 people working 12 hours or more a day. And you don't see that very often. You don't see large groups of people working for no money, for someone they love, for something they believe in, with such focus. It used to exist. The monks that built Chartres Cathedral knew they would never see it finished. They did not get paid. But I'm sure they had a similar feeling of, we will build something beautiful.
We were living in 3 shifts, some of the houses. So one comes in, makes fresh bed, goes another to work. It was like Japan. We had 2-tier beds, 3-tier beds sometimes. It was really miraculous. And still, it was harmonious.
The ashram in Poona is bursting at the seams. There isn't enough room. And Rajneesh says, we must find a new place. Lakshmi began to go for long drives or airplane flights to find a place within India. And so did Sheela. It was very obvious that whoever found the new ashram would have considerable favor and status. So there began a competition. Sheela set the groundworks that Rajneesh could go to the States. Sheela had lived in New Jersey for years and was very familiar with America. So Sheela found the future and Lakshmi didn't. So the There were several things that came together. Rajneesh had given in a public discourse a reference to Hindus and Muslims. The Hindus heard as disparaging. And one result of this was the local courts began to move against Rajneesh.
He provoked the world. It was multidimensional, though everybody tried to find one reason, that because of taxes. I knew one thing. He wanted space. He needed space. What you see in the picture, you see that I offered him champagne as our flight took off. And no one would dare Bhagwan serve champagne. But I loved him.
Suddenly we were on a 747 at 35,000 feet, going to something I had no idea what we were going to. Where Sheela was in charge, where we were promised unending hard work, where it was only this chosen few. From 5,000 people, 30 were chosen. We were the special ace hard work crew. So I was not looking forward to what this would be.
Bombay was the flirting. Poona was the foreplay. And then was action.
When did it begin? When did it begin to go wrong? And where I arrive at 35 years later is it was always there. He had ambition. So he came to America, and at the top of the stairs of the Boeing 747, as he looked at JFK Airport, he said, "I am the Messiah America has been waiting for." And to me, that's not an enlightened statement. If you were to ask me what an enlightened statement might be, I'll do my best, or let's see what will happen now.
Bhagwan's vision had 10,000 people living together. And to create a project like what he had in mind, it was not a project for people trying to look for inner bliss. Keine Circus, wir machen heute Film, okay? Ohne Circus. One day he says, "You have 6 weeks to buy the land." The night before I left, "You have 1 week." I enjoyed it. I enjoyed his craziness. I loved the guy. I first flew to Tennessee, then to Arizona, Idaho I went, and then I arrived in Oregon. It was a desert. It was no person in right mind would buy it, probably. That tells you about my state of mind, too.
Sheela comes back and announces that we should all assemble. She has very important news and says, "I have found the promised land, I have found paradise, and it's all ours." And Richard said, "Well, is it zoned commercial or residential?" And Sheela does a funny thing with her face, and I realize I don't know what zoning means. I've never heard the word zoning. But I know Sheela doesn't know what zoning means either. And I can see she's lost and she says, well, yes, it's zoned as a farm and it's zoned, people can live there, it's zoned residential. And I know she's lying. And I suddenly realize that she spent $5 million to buy the place and not checked on its zoning. What's the truth? The truth is it's zoned for 6 people.
It was as big a land as Manhattan. It was marked as grazeland. That means you cannot build. So Bhagwan did not want to lose any moment. He had to create roots. Because once you have the roots, to throw you out is difficult. We had to move fast.
I became a heavy construction worker working on a front-end loader. We were told that Bhagwan will come soon and we have to get his house ready, and so we worked like busy bees to get everything ready for his arrival. Yeah, it was great to see him and Vivek. I got some good pictures of them coming off the Learjet. Yes, I was pleased to see him, excited that this could work.
Bhagwan would just make his demands, and I have to see to it how we meet the ends. And the instructions of Bhagwan was, only bring in people who are good at work. We had architects, we had lawyers. Simultaneously, there were few people who had financial prominence. Those people, Bhagwan sent a special invitation through me.
Within a year of my arrival on the Big Muddy Ranch, there were some 2,500 of us living there. The subterfuge was to build these A-frame buildings, easy to disguise, erecting them in canyons off the dirt roads. We had multiple strategies to hide how many people were really there, to get as many people legal as possible. There was the beginning of arranged marriages so that all the European or South American would marry people that had American passports. That was organized on a very sophisticated basis.
When you cannot move forward in a normal way, then you have to think of creative way. Thousand Friends of Oregon, they blocked our project with legal action. How do we come around? We can create our own city.
The proposal to incorporate Rajneesh conflicts with statewide.
To create a city in America, you need 150 American citizens. So we did everything in a legal channel. we used the American law to establish ourselves. And then was created city of Rajneeshpuram.
Fire!
For many of us, work began at latest 7 in the morning and went till 7 or 8 in the evening. At the evening meal, I would sit amongst the other men and they would talk about the hydraulic systems of their bulldozers. It wasn't the kind of soul talk that I had grown used to in Poona. I missed the meditation. Our master was now in silence. He had said, "You will understand me without words." The drive-bys began in September of that first year. Many of the crews had a walkie-talkie radio and they would say, code name, Archangel is headed your way, come up to the road. The same drive every day. It felt a little hollow.
I find it beautiful. Everybody would run, drop their work to greet Bhagwan. One day, few people from outside came as guests and put flower on Bhagwan's car. And then Bhagwan said to me, "You start selling flowers here for my drive-by. So it brings an income." I mean, he was an absolute entrepreneur. He knew capitalism to the end.
He would not talk to us. There would be a weekly meeting where Sheela would tell us what he had said. We had this moment where Sheela stood up and said, "If any of you are discontented, you should please stand up now and say it." Chinmayananda, who had been a samurai who had come over with the original crew of samurai on the 747 with Rajneesh, stood up, and as I saw him stand up, I thought, "Oh, you stupid, sit down." And he stood up in his strong American voice. He was is a very handsome, powerful man, and he said, "Well, I think the food really could bear improvement, and frankly, our sleeping quarters for most of the guys really is not adequate." And within 4 weeks, he had lost his job as Rajneesh's driver. He had lost all his privileges and status. Yeah, you didn't complain. It was necessary for us to gain control of the city of Antelope to increase our sannyasi population. And we vote ourselves into power. To me, there was at the time a little awareness of a kind of chauvinism that we are the people, we have the truth, we have the enlightened guru. Therefore, whatever we do is okay. Whenever a person or an organization feels they have the truth, the only truth, blame and judgment are sure to follow. And we certainly had that.
First, we tried it in a very friendly way. but didn't work.
Yes, they do. They stop while they're traveling, and then buy the vegetables.
There is one God Almighty, creator of heaven and earth.
Intolerance, fear, and jealousy. That was the situation. There was a reason to have paranoia from outside world. There was security established, security displayed.
You weren't allowed to leave the ranch unless it was an official job. All the mail was read and screened. All outgoing phone calls were screened.
Somebody was outside cleaning the cabin telephone, heard something being said against Bhagwan. Information traveled to us. Then Bhagwan was asked what to do. Bhagwan said, put a control on cabin telephones.
The official reason was that we need to hide the fact that so many friends are here, and if you value the commune and this wonderful thing we're creating, you'll understand that, and you'll take every care not to disclose how many people are really here. Later, I think it became a means of controlling the commune.
If somebody felt that they feel like a prisoner, they could go out at any time. Then biggest money came from the festival that we created, where people came for a few weeks, stayed with us and paid. And there were some rich people who donated the money. We also had a big overdraft facility from UBS. I don't know if you like that or not, but we did.
I was 34 years old at that point, and most of the new blood coming in were young Americans. And they were very happy to be in a community and have free love and have a band of brothers and sisters to be with. It was a powerful field, but I was wary of echoes of how group fields could be manipulated. Some time later, Vivek said, he wants you to take photos of the session. He's discovered that he feels better with nitrous oxide. And I didn't know this was going on. It was a complete secret. So I come into the dentist's room, and his personal doctor is there, his personal dentist is there. And Rajneesh comes in and lies down on the dental chair. The cannula, the little plastic tubes, are put up his nose, and he starts to talk. Oh, a little more of the nitrous now. No, now, please, now, a little more of the oxygen. Okay, there it is. It's just right. And I'm in a state of disbelief because he's slurring his words and his eyes are kind of droopy, half open, and he's in an exhausted recline being fed drugs through his nose. And I think, what's happened to you? And in that first session, he said something like, Sheela wants to get me an aeroplane. I don't need an aeroplane, I'm flying now. And I thought, you poor sod, you have to do this to feel good now? And a flashback to Bombay where he was, and bright and clear and fast, and he could see and he could respond, and he was like that. And you were with him and you felt wonderful and you knew he felt wonderful. And now here he is 9 years later. Sheela wants to buy me an aeroplane. I don't need an aeroplane. And I'm thinking, you want me to take photos of you like this? And so I took photos of him. That's what I came to do. Of the cannula and the people around and the lady taking notes of what he was saying. And Vivek said at the end, okay, give me the films. I was really in a very split place, and I met people that I felt a close connection to, and some of those people, it turned out I couldn't really talk to without them going to the office. And so Sheela called me, and Sheela says, Shiva, I've heard some of the things you've been saying to people, negative things, and the bottom line is you either have to shut up or leave. And I took a breath and said, well, then I have to leave. Rajneesh Foundation International Newsletter, dated. No date. But it was about November 1982. Beloved friends, love. Hugh Milne, formerly Swami Shivamurti, is no longer a disciple of Bhagwan. This is an event from which we can all learn. He exploited his position in Poona as head of 300 guards. At Rajneesh Puram, Hugh Milne did not have the opportunity for power, and immediately his discontent began to surface. No Rajneesh centers, communes, or ashrams should support him in any way or have anything to do with him. Innocent people, especially new sannyasins, may think that because Hugh Milne has been seen in so many photographs sitting by Bhagwan's side, that he is someone special. In reality, he is just a cunning and clever individual who will not hesitate to exploit Bhagwan's disciples. His blessings, Mahanand Sheela, personal secretary to Bhagwan.
It is terrible. I know the pain myself, but it is the nature of institution. Bhagwan was very clear. You have to be ready. And if his sannyasins are so stupid and naive to believe Sheela has done everything, then I must say, you have not known Bhagwan.
Schau mal, wir machen eine schöne farbige Sachen, huh?
He was the boss, and if this is how he wants it, then I have to play his game. There was a county elections. Bhagwan said, we should have representation. We need more American voting population. Many politicians use homeless for voting. So I mentioned this to Bhagwan, and Bhagwan said it's a good idea. Then we transported homeless people to us.
Few of us went to the county seat today to register to vote. We have come home. We have come home, and we have done the right thing. The Master has brought us home to protect us from the neo-colonial, imperialistic, technocratic society of the United States of aggression.
And let us continue to have crime-free, drug-free, violence-free first city in the United States of America. Named after our beloved Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh.
Bhagwan said for him it was more an experiment to see how strong we are. It wasn't a sinister plan that bring them and then throw them out. We only had discussed the beginning, how the end is. You leave it.
Because I have reason to believe there are organized efforts to fraudulently register people in Wasco County to vote in the November general election, I have decided to do a blanket rejection of all new voter registrations in Wasco County.
Some homeless people already left after a few days, wanted to go back to their under-the-bridge lifestyle. Some didn't want to follow the rules of the commune. Then we told them they should go.
Ain't but one. There's but one God. And I'm not he. But one? No, man. Don't talk about that, man. We have to get out of here with this Bhagwan action.
Since they feel that the voting rights had been changed, since they can't get us to use our votes, now they want us to leave. Because they can't use it. This is like a left shoe. She told them not to call the street people, then why she throw us back out on the street?
I don't know about the anger part. It may be that some wanted to stay and not follow the rules and still stay, and they were told to go. That may be. But if you have seen archives, maybe so. I can't say as black and white as you see it, because that's not what my memory is.
I spent weeks in a slowly deepening sense of personal crisis. Kind of deep inner panic. Well, I don't feel I belong in the ashram. I don't belong in the world. I tried to kill myself. That didn't work. I didn't have the determination to successfully kill myself. I looked for help. I went to a psychiatrist for help. He laughed at me and said, well, frankly, I think you should just go back there. And I thought, no help to me at all. I can't go back there. And I thought, where can I get help? I want to go to a psychiatric hospital. It took about 9 months of deep crisis and pain and to slowly again find a new identity. I didn't know it as craniosacral work. Don't do anything, just notice where your hands want to go. Now change your focus to your inner eye. Now we go to inner ear. Listen to whatever answer you hear. What I got from this time of being suicidal and being lost and broken and paranoid and terrified and was a profound appreciation of other people's pain and how important it is to hold a space for that level of pain. So there were, in a way, good things to this painful journey.
We had heard that the CIA and FBI, they were all in the ranch. The paranoia comes from outside in and it increases. The nature of paranoia is ugly. It's dangerous. And our community, harmless community, we had to start thinking like paramilitar.
Ready on the right?
This is where the time was where I said, if you take one of ours, I will take 15 of yours.
Nobody will touch this home. And you tell your governors, you tell your attorney general, and all your bigoted pigs outside that they dare touch any of our people. And that I include these new friends in it. These are our people. They touch any of our people, I'll have one of our person, I will have 15 of their heads, and I'm in business.
Is your feeling now that there is something new to say, or is it that you enjoy the showmanship for breaking the public silence?
I will not die silently. And I enjoy talking to my people. I enjoy their response. And of course, I am a showman. Everybody is, just they don't have guts to say it.
Maprem Isabel, Press Relations Bureau.
I have a question that everybody asks me, but nobody asks you today. And that is, during the time you didn't speak, Sheela was speaking all over the place. And many people got offended with her comments. And everybody asked, how come Sheela is your spokesperson? How come Sheela makes those statements? She's antagonizing people. Would you say something about that?
I was also very much offended by Sheela. Whenever she came back, I hit her hard because she was not the way I would like her to be, really outrageous. She was falling below the standard. And I was continuously telling her, don't be worried, we don't have anything to lose, we have to gain the whole world and nothing to lose.
When I could not play his game anymore, I left. But I had to come to that clarity about my tolerance point to say, no, now I'm not ready to play. When his demand for luxuries went out of handle, and when I found out that he was being pumped with Valiums. I think these people had made him an addict. Bhagwan told me I should not interfere. My job is to protect him. With this kind of situation, I cannot protect him. And if I cannot protect him, I cannot be his secretary.
Without seeing me, just she wrote a note that she is living and living forever, and she is resigning from the post. Only in the beginning she was useful. As the commune started growing, she became dangerous. She was creating what every power-lusty person creates: hostility amongst the neighbors. Adolf Hitler writes in his autobiography that unless you create hostility amongst your neighbor nations, you can never become strong. And why it happened, I was unavailable to the commune. I was silent. I did not want to be interfered. No phone. For 5 years I have not read any newspaper, have not seen any television.
You call yourself intelligent, you are educated, you are not naive. When time comes to hold the bag, you want to dump it on Sheila's head and run away? Cowards. Third-rate cowards, I call Bhagwan and his sannyasins. Both.
She has attempted to kill 3 commune members. She has attempted to kill the whole city of Dallas. Naturally, she must be in a paranoia. And after knowing all this, I can also say to you that she killed her own husband too.
How did she do that?
Her husband was sick with cancer.
This is Mr. Silverman? This is Mr. Silverman?
Yeah, Mr. Silverman, her first husband. But she was loving another man, and that was a constant trouble. And finally, because he was again and again, needed oxygen, it seems that she cut the oxygen source.
In spite of ugly, nasty accusations, in spite of the pain I felt thinking how my parents felt when I was in prison, how my brothers, sisters felt. But I know they loved me. They trusted me. Their little daughter cannot harm anybody. Their little daughter, their little stupid sister, she's one in a million. And that trust, that love kept me moving, kept me going. Now I'm 60-year-old. I choose what I talk about and I choose what I don't want to talk about. And this is one theme, is boring. It does not bring anybody anything. It's over. After prison, I needed to do something and I missed my parents. I saw my parents in these old people. So I checked up the legal situation and began the work. Ja, du sagst mir, huh? Jetzt bisschen Kaffee? Ja. Okay. If I can find in 1 week for Bhagwan a property, I can do it. And I used his own teaching for my survival.
I can still love Rajneesh, but I really can't call him Bhagwan, because for me he has a strong shadow, and many of the things he did were criminal, and it was a great, to me, loss of potential that the commune didn't work. Recently I watched The Wizard of Oz again. The first movie I ever saw in my life was The Wizard of Oz. And at the end, the Judy Garland, the young girl, goes behind the screen of the wizard. There's this big wizard puffing smoke. And she discovers to her horror that this little man is manipulating the controls that makes the wizard seem this huge, imposing figure. And the Judy Garland figure looks at this little man and says, "You're a bad man." And he says, "No, I'm a good man, but I'm a bad wizard."
I had my time, had my ride, had my turn, had my round, had your credit with no habit, had my trials, devil dance with my demons sound the fairest tunes to my misfortune, and the devil dance with my demons sound the fairest tune to my misfortune. And play all around my way. I will have a rest, press reset, and if my heart protests, open up my chest. There's no much time